Okay, we're live for our second weekly wrap-up. Andres, thanks for joining me again.
Not a problem, Kyle. Happy to be here again.
I think I'll thank you every week, even though I'm just going to keep doing this. I think I'll thank you every week. Okay, so this week's DXP report was topped by your article that you wrote, the rise of headless commerce and how legacy platforms have reacted. Why don't you give us a quick breakdown of that, 10-second breakdown, and then give us a 2-minute breakdown? Why not?
Yeah, sure. So basically titled it the meteoric growth of headless commerce and how legacy platforms have responded. So last week we kind of mentioned instant commerce. They have a 5.4 million euro raise, and we've seen quite a number of those raises over the last, actually a lot in 2022. And I just wanted to take a quick look at basically the impact that those raises had, how headless commerce has grown their trend, and how what you would consider previously traditional commerce vendors, how they've kind of responded, and they're also adopting the headless movement as well.
Yeah, I think you did a good job of that. Anyone who's reading the article, you've mentioned Qantas as one example. Qantas, Ulta Beauty, I think I'm saying that. Ulta Beauty, saying that correctly. You've done a good job of sort of explaining that, and definitely when you look at the growth, again, it's been around for a while, the headless thing in general. But if you look at the Google Trends image that you've put in the article, definitely 2019 was the inflection point, and things have just really boomed from then. I think it's going to boom. I think we're right at the very beginning of this boom. I think that this is going to get much bigger, with headless commerce being the default way to do commerce in a few years to come. Whether it's called headless commerce or not, that's a different story, whether it will just become something else. But I think it's going to definitely, this is the future of commerce, basically. And I think that a lot of the commerce players we're seeing in the space are confirming that. Again, you've also mentioned, Sitecore acquiring 451. Sitecore have made a number of acquisitions recently, obviously, across the headless space. But yeah, the commerce one being interesting right now. Order Cloud, again, is another one they acquired. Another thing that your article did that I found interesting was talking about how these players should present themselves. So again, the Sitecores, the Contentfuls, the Storyblocks, the .cms's of the world, they're all coming at this from slightly different angles, right? But commerce is going to be important for pretty much every headless CMS, unless it's a headless CMS that basically says we don't do commerce, which is becoming more and more rare. Mm-hmm. There's different ways for them to approach this, right? And obviously, again, a Sitecore versus a Contentful, different ends of the spectrum. Sitecore is trying to sort of unpack itself as a legacy monolith. Contentful we started off as the basic, not basic, but the sort of stripped down headless CMS, a pure headless CMS, and they're both sort of meeting halfway, if you will. They're sort of building towards each other. In slightly different ways, but it feels like that to me. It's sort of building towards each other. And towards at the end of your article, you're talking about, legacy platforms. I'm quoting you now. Quoting your article, legacy platforms should recognize that this is a time to pivot. Similar to what brands like Sitecore and Salesforce have managed to do. I just thought that was interesting. And when it comes to sort of messaging for these guys, I feel like one issue that exists is these players not necessarily doing a great job of explaining that they come from different parts of the spectrum, and someone from the outside looking in is unable to sort of differentiate. And maybe that's on purpose, right? If you are Sitecore, maybe it's on purpose that you can't really differentiate their offering from Contentful's offering, for example, off the bat, right? You kind of need to dig deeper to see what the differences are. But from the perspective of, agencies looking to work with these products maybe, or just, clients and customers and enterprises looking to use these products, there is a big difference between, headless commerce Sitecore style and headless commerce Contentful style. There is still a big difference, right?
Yeah, so I think what we need to also remember about headless commerce is, and this is something I kind of mentioned as well, is that one of the reasons why headless commerce is growing so much, it also falls onto the umbrella of MAP. So microservice-based, API-first, cloud-native, headless. So a lot of headless commerce, they're kind of packaging themselves towards this as a whole, not just headless commerce, but the MAP architecture. And that's how we get the differences between then we actually get the differences between how a Psycho versus a Contentful versus whatever, how they're presenting themselves in terms of being headless, hybrid headless, how much do they focus on developers, how much do they focus on marketers, and so and I think all that goes into how, if you are an enterprise business starting to like look at a headless CMS, that's where you then start to look at, okay, where does this fit in for me and how I'm already doing things.
Yeah. There's definitely a lot of research that needs to be done. I say unfortunately for enterprises who are looking at this, because the initial messaging you get is not as not all as it seems. You have to sort of understand the landscape quite a bit to really make some the right decisions. But and I'm not saying one is right and one is wrong, but for different enterprises come from different backgrounds. Maybe they've got legacy systems in place already, maybe they don't. Maybe they're trying to get out of legacy environments and contracts. This will impact the decision, and I feel like the space is sort of messaging wise is very premature at this point. Maybe that's on purpose again, to sort of blur the lines between a more composable sort of pure headless that's becoming more feature rich versus a monolith that's trying to sort of strip itself down through acquisitions, maybe to make itself API first. Sort of to adopt that, to pivot into that. It's two very different sort of backgrounds there, and that baggage both sides. There's baggage on both sides. It exists, and it's not very clear to the buyer unless they do a lot of research and a lot of digging. But I think that's something we're going to cover quite frequently going forward. I don't want to spend too much time on that. I think it's a great article. I think everyone should go and read that and let us know what you think in the comments. But let's move on. We want to keep these short and sweet as possible. So next thing I want to talk about is a bit more lighthearted, I guess. So I found this. We included this Forbes article in DXP Report this week. But I did mention in the report, I can't remember the wording, but it was like, you're not going to have your mind blown by the detail of this. And it's basically an article on what you should look for in the content management system. And I don't want to disrespect the article, but the article does read as if it could have been written 10 years ago, right? It seems like everything we just said a minute ago about headless and the market and the complexity of it, none of that, quite frankly, is reflected in this article. So they've said that having a secure CMS should be a top priority, which is fair enough, to be fair. After that, they talk about a CMS that provides automatic updates. Felt that was kind of a bit of a given. We're kind of post SaaS right now, post cloud. That was a bit of a weird one. The CMS should be easy to use for most, if not all, users. Again, fine. Basically, it's a very basic article. It's got no mention of, again, being API first, being headless, being composable, the Mac architecture. It feels very out of touch with where the industry is right now. So I just wanted to sort of highlight as sort of like a typical Forbes article that kind of misses the point, right? Kind of missed the point.
Yeah. But I think we also do have to remember too is that, and also written an article about this as well, is when people think of the CMS, when most people think of CMS, first thing that comes to mind is going to be WordPress. So WordPress still dominates the market. So I think that's why these are some of the things that I mentioned, like the automatic updates, various permission levels and things like that. A lot of companies, and maybe these could be small to mid-sized enterprises even, they're thinking, okay, CMS has to manage content. Okay, cool. Can I do that? That's what we need. And then it's only down the road that they maybe start thinking, is what we have enough for what our customers are expecting? All this omni-channel and all these different channels, social media platforms, all these things sort of pushing. Do we have enough? I saw a stat somewhere the other day that Gen Z right now, they're 40% of them, they don't use Google search. They go to social media platforms to find anything. So Instagram, TikTok, they go there to find things. So is everything going to be, so right now, companies may not be thinking about that, but then down the road, it's like, okay, so can we control all our content that we want to publish everywhere, whether it's like these social media platforms, website, wherever it is? Are we able to control all of that easily in our CMS and get it all done? They might be running into difficulty when they start looking at it.
It's true. That's a good point. And they do mention WordPress in the article as well. You mentioned WordPress.
Yeah.
They do mention it, but again, it's sort of like they mention it in a kind of disparaging way, where it's like, you know, if you're looking for, you want to consider whether or not you actually need a CMS or a blogging platform. And they mention WordPress, and it's like, you know, in another place, like when thinking about a proper CMS. So it's almost like the kind of disparaging WordPress, saying it may not be enough, but pretty much every point they've raised, like WordPress does fulfill it, right? They've sort of not gone past that. So yeah, it's kind of a weird one, but yeah, Forbes for you. Let's move on to probably the biggest news of this week, which is Crownpeak acquiring Attraqt. They didn't disclose the amount, did they?
Yeah, no, it's I don't think the acquisition is actually even complete. It's kind of like at the end of the board is kind of said, okay, yep, we've approved this and this one it's going to be. It's maybe they actually did something like, what was it, 63.2 million pounds approximately.
Right, that's right.
That's what's going to be. It's not going through yet, so that could change by the time it happens, but like that's what they're targeting right now. That's what the value is going to be. Yeah,
and I guess for those listening from the US, it could definitely change based on just the pound, the British pound sort of fluctuating or dropping in value. So that could definitely impact things. But so basically, Attraqt is it's an AI-powered e-commerce search engine. Right? It can also do like personalization and product recommendations. So it's obviously like very e-commerce focused platform. This is Crownpeak's second sort of large scale acquisition in the last 2 years. They acquired eSpirit, the Headless CMS, back in 2021, and that was like bolstering their Headless CMS capabilities, I guess. And now they're sort of trying to bolster the e-commerce capabilities, which again, to your point earlier on, and to your article's point, is a huge area of growth. And I think they've recognized that with this acquisition, and they've already got a commerce layer, they've got a commerce product, but obviously it was lacking in sort of search. So they've gone ahead and got Attraqt in there. I imagine it's going to sort of absorb it into their existing commerce product and not have it as a separate product, but I could be wrong. But yeah, it's an interesting one because they've sort of, if you go on Crownpeak's website, they've definitely doubled down on being a DXP in like the suite sense, right? So unlike, you know, a lot of headless CMS players that are saying, yes, we're a DXP, and what they mean by that is we're the foundation of the DXP and you can build on top of us using APIs. Crownpeak has definitely gone that to the suite route. They've got like 6 products, maybe even 7 now if Attraqt's going to be a separate one. Don't quote me, but I think they can be purchased and used individually, but they can definitely be purchased and used as a package as Crownpeak DXP. So yeah, it's an interesting, player, Crownpeak, and this is an interesting acquisition. I think it's, again, to your point, headless commerce is booming, and it's probably, I mean, it definitely has a higher ceiling than headless CMS as a niche. Headless commerce is just like much more of a higher ceiling. And I think over the next year or so, we'll see a lot more acquisitions looking like this. I imagine acquisitions of features being released by headless CMS vendors. What do you think?
Yeah, and to your point, there's also something that we saw Sitecore do. So Sitecore, they acquired 451, integrated it into their core product, renamed it as Sitecore Order Cloud, and then they've done as well with a few other products. So we mentioned Sitecore acquisitions in the past as well. So this could be something that larger players who are DXP, who are definitely DXPs, they might be going this route rather than trying to only focus on the CMS aspect or trying to build those other things themselves. Just like any large company, acquire products and then like the companies that fit the other things, that do their things really well. So in this case, Crownpeak acquiring Attraqt because they have that e-commerce search engine, and then just integrate it fully into your product, repackage it. So come next year, we might hear that Crownpeak has released they might launch a press release for something new, and so just then repackaging Attraqt as a part of the Crownpeak DXP.
Yeah, they may do. It's what Sitecore have done. And I imagine they're going to do something similar or just absorb it into their existing. Because, again, if you go on their website, they've got like 6 products already. And I wonder if there's like Attraqt's like just going to be absorbed into it or not. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But okay, I think that wraps up our wrap-up. Yeah, thanks for listening. And we'll see you again next week. Thanks, Andres.
Thanks, man. Bye.
Sorry,